he also does programs at Fort Garland. He's a brilliant historian, genetic expert in his culture. And I saw this lecture last year. It really shifted my perspective. It was very surprising, some of the in-depth research that he's done. And so Sean and the Yeneta Navajo dancers will be both all be up at the amphitheater tonight as well at 6:30, presenting some traditional dances as well. As well. So anyway, we're honored to have Sean Price today, and we value and honor our relationship with the Navajo
people. Before I begin, Patrick, Sierra, I'd like to present both of you with something. Our Navajo Nation, we signed our treaty with your government, with the United States, on the 1st of June, 1868. And since then, that treaty has remained still today a legally binding document that has set the framework of our nation-to-nation relationship. And so, when we signed our treaty with Sherman, our people were, of course, in a diaspora situation. We were not home. And we were removed from our homeland, resettled in an area where for 4 agonizing years we were in this prisoner of war site known as Bosque Redondo, Fort Sumner. It is Sherman who would visit that site and see the conditions that the Navajo people were in. The Navajo people would begin, the first group would return home on June 18th of 1868. Part of the allocation of our people returning home was Sherman and the Peace Commission. They had a allocation of 150,000 at that time. Today it's over 10 million. But that purchased a lot of things for the Navajo people to return home. And one of them was fabric. And so I started a treaty fabric program with Ohio, the Fairfield County Historical Society, that has ownership of the Sherman home and the Sherman Center there in Lancaster, Ohio. So every late April, early May, the Fairfield County Historical Society purchased fabric. They send it to Bosque Redondo, and we issue our treaty fabric. So Sierra, I'd like to share with you some of our treaty fabric. And of course, Patrick, as always, we thank you so much for having us here, and I want to present that with you. Before we begin, I ask please no recording of this. We always begin in my way with prayer. And for those of you who want to stand, you're more than welcome to, but we are at the foot of for my people on our tribal seal here. There are 4 mountains. This mountain that is on the top is colored white. If you go outside and look to the southeast, you will see this white mountain. That is our eastern mountain. That is a holy mountain to us. This is the mountain our people went to in our version of the Great Flood. That is where we went. There's a long story with that. We blame the coyote for causing that Great Flood. He is the individual responsible for that. But these 4 mountains, our eastern one here, where you are, our southern one is near the town of Grants, New Mexico, called Mount Taylor. Our western one, the color yellow, is at the base of it is the city of Flagstaff. That's also the highest point in the state of Arizona. And our northern mountain is to the west of here, between the towns of Durango and Cortez, Colorado, Hesperus Mountain. So there's a lot of stories I could go on and on with that, but again, before we begin, I just want to share the simple prayer. we use in our prayer. This is our most holiest sacrament, our corn power. And in our tradition, I know in other traditions, I know they say, Creator, if you help me with this situation or help me with that, I promise I'll do this, I promise I'll do that. For us, those promises are not necessary. For in a way, it may be strange for some of you, but for us, even prayer is not free. There's always a duality to everything. In order for something to be received, something must be offered, something must be given. That is our relationship with the divine, with all things around us. And so, when we came here, we gave our offerings, and so this is something that we do when we are at the foot of one of our most sacred and beloved and cherished mountains. So I'm going to go ahead and begin our program. There's a lot I could cover in this, but I'm going to go ahead and just get started. If you do have any questions, please reserve them for the end. What got me on this journey was in 2018, my dance group, we traveled back east for our 150th treaty commemoration year. I didn't really know much about Sherman at that time. I knew he was a signatory on our treaty, but as I delved more into going back east and did events with our commemoration, I got a sense of this individual and read many books on him. I've read so far over 40 books, and I got some more books on him. Unfortunately, all of them get the narrative wrong when it comes to the post-Civil War era, and I'll get into that. In our travels, though, we have 3 flags here that we were given. We have the flag of the state of Tennessee, and in view from there, this is from the President Andrew Johnson Historical Center. We did a program there. Andrew Johnson oversaw the Peace Commission of 1867 and 1868. We have for any Yankees up here. We have a flag of our Boston Red Sox fans. We have a flag of the state of Massachusetts. This was given to us when we did a program last year at Manchester by the Sea. Colonel Samuel Tappan, who was the second signatory of our treaty. This is from his descendants. And of course, we have a flag here from the Buckeye State, the state of Ohio, which I call my second home, from Lancaster, Ohio, that we received in our program. Sherman is in the middle. Most people are familiar with what is to his right, the saber, the sword. People are familiar with his exploits during the Civil War. And I'll share just a little bit of Civil War, but not too much. But most people are not familiar with the left side of his life and legacy, the pen and the paper, which to me is more profound, and if anything, is his lasting and living legacy to this day. And I stand before you as proof of that lasting and living legacy. Sherman is named after this individual called Tecumseh. Tecumseh, for those of you who are not familiar, he is one of the most profound, intelligent, and unique tribal leaders to ever exist. He came this close to creating what would have been a native confederacy of tribal nations, uniting under one banner that would have and stop the expansion of the United States dead in its tracks. He was very much working with the British, and the British commanders were watching his successful efforts, and the British were very much going to support this new native confederacy. So just ponder that for a moment. Natives with cannons, natives building forts, stopping the United States dead in its tracks. That almost happened with this unique individual, Tecumseh. He would die in a very violent battle in 1813 called the Battle of Thames, which today is in Ontario, Canada, but he still remains today a martyr with that vision of, I would say, native independence in that regard. And ironically, Sherman's father, Charles Sherman, would have a taking to him and would eventually name the young boy and give Sherman his first name, which is Tecumseh. Sherman's first name is not William. William would come later. At age 9, Sherman's father would die, and he would be adopted by a Ewing, called the Ewing family. The Ewings are staunch, hardcore, devout Jesuit Catholic family. And the mother, Maria, did not like that name, Tecumseh. So there's two versions to the story. One is Sherman was taken to church on the feast of St. William, and he was given that name by a Jesuit priest. The other version is he was given the name William because St. William is the patron saint of adopted children. So William is Sherman's second name. This is the Ewing family. To the far left is Mr. Thomas Ewing. He would go on to be the first Secretary of Interior. I could go on and on about this, but this is Ellen Ewing. Eventually, she would go on to become Sherman's wife. This fast forwarding a lot in history because I want to get to my main topic. But this is the Blair House. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Blair House, this is for the United States, your guest house. Various leaders from all over the world have stayed here. President Xi Jinping of China, President Vladimir Putin of Russia, the late Queen of England, Elizabeth stayed here. So this house is literally across the street from the White House, and it is here where Sherman will get married to Ellen on May 1st, 1850. And this wedding was the wedding to be at. It is 1850. And if you were someone in a prominent place, in a prominent position, you wanted to attend this wedding. And so I want to set the scene, if I may. You have prominent families like President Zachary Taylor, who's attending this wedding. Taylor owns slaves. There's other members of his cabinet who own slaves. And I guarantee you those slaves are going to be at this wedding. You also have on the other side very staunch other prominent families, many of whom are abolitionists. And it's a very interesting mixture of these families, powerful families, coming together, being cordial to each other at this function. And we all know what's going to happen 10 years from this wedding. But this is the backyard. This is where Sherman and Ellen would have given their vows to each other. What's interesting today with the Blair House is to this day, in that house, this is what's called the treaty room. Still today, treaties are being made. These are individuals from the State Department and the Russian Federation still wheeling and dealing on matters of diplomatic and world issues. Fast forwarding, I wonder what the first Secretary of Interior would think of our current Secretary of Interior, the first Native woman ever to hold that position, Deb Haaland from the Pueblo of Laguna. I think she was here as well. She came and visited the park here. I'm fast forwarding now to 1864. There's a lot I could focus on with Sherman's Civil War, but 1864 is a very profound year in the history of the United States. The war has gone on 4 years. And by the summer of 1864, the North is not having it anymore. Lincoln is becoming unpopular. The war is dragging on. There's just this sentiment of let's just have this thing over with already. During that summer, Lincoln is going to have a special cabinet meeting. He's going to gather his cabinet members and say, we're not going to win this. What do we do? What are our options? Lincoln even came this close to canceling the election of 1864. But he had to realize that if he canceled the election, then the very democracy he's fighting to preserve, it's going to speak and counter to that understanding. And so Lincoln was in a conundrum. So the Democrats at their convention, they nominated George McClellan to be the president for the Democratic ticket. McClellan is going to sue for peace with the Confederacy. And then, of course, the Republicans had their convention that summer. They renominate, of course, Lincoln to be the ticket for the Republican nominee. But as the summer winds, again, there's no clear, decisive victory until September 2nd, 1864. I cannot tell you how profound this date is in the history of the United States. And as a Native person, I say this to you Americans. In that moment where the unthinkable seemed possible. Where, history could have gone the other way. It is literally Sherman who saves the day in that moment. By securing Atlanta, 3 things are going to happen. Number 1, it's going to reinvigorate the much needed morale of the North. The North needed that. Secondly, it is going to embolden Grant and his forces to continue to press against General Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia in Virginia, because Grant has not had the best of luck in going after Lee. It's kind of been a stalemate. Thirdly, by Sherman taking Atlanta, it is going to, without question, guarantee the re-election of President Abraham Lincoln to his 2nd term in office. So when I say this as a native person to you Americans, when I say Sherman saves your country, he literally saves your country. Everything you cherish, everything you value, everything you adhere to in the understanding of the preservation of your country, in that moment, it is Sherman who makes the unthinkable not happen. But Sherman isn't done. He's going to do what is known as the March to the Sea. And I could go on and on this presentation and focus just on this. But he is going to have roughly anywhere from 60 to, at the most, I've heard 65,000 under his command. He's going to have 3 cavalry divisions. One on his right wing, 3,000 men. One on his left wing, 3,000 men. And a cavalry division in front of him of 2,000 men. It's going to span 60 miles. It's going to be a 60-mile wide front with a length of about roughly 30 miles. And Sherman is going to do what is known as, loosely translate as a scorched earth policy. Anything of military value is going to be destroyed. Railroads, storage houses, what have you. They will be like locusts before the land and will pillage everything before them. When Sherman is in this March to the Sea, which is late November to late December of 1864, he is also incommunicado. He will be completely out of communication. Lincoln will later write, Sherman went down a hole. I don't know what hole he's coming out of. So, but nonetheless, the effect of this March to the Sea would be very profound. And the next time I want to put in perspective, Joseph E. Johnston, who will later surrender to Sherman, is quoted as saying, quote, "No such army since the days of Julius Caesar." And to put this march and this massive military operation into further perspective, the next time in your country's history, when this kind of massive military operation will be launched by the armed forces of the United States and its allies, will not be until the 6th of June, 1944, D-Day. Sherman's March to the Sea is the D-Day of the Civil War. These are Sherman's commanders. I could go on and on and on about them, but the gentleman standing to the far left with his hands behind him goes by the name of McPherson. McPherson's a very interesting individual. He would die in the Battle of Atlanta. He will be shot by a sniper. In a way, Sherman was kind of grooming McPherson to eventually take his spot, and Sherman really is kind of devastated.